He knew I was at the hospital with my sister. That's when he sold my car, vanished, and left me homeless. It wasn't the missed calls that broke me. It was the silence when I finally heard back. I was sitting on the steps outside the ER, half a bagel in my lap, 3 hours of sleep in my body, when I realized something was off. You know that weird pull in your chest when your life's about to shift and you don't even know why yet? That's how it felt. My phone buzzed. 4 missed calls from Tammy Walker, 1 from the bank, and a text that just said, "I'm sorry." No context, no explanation. Just, "I'm sorry." I opened my rideshare app to head home, but there was no home listed. The address was gone from my favorites. That's when it hit me. He did it. Wade. He sold my car, changed the locks, and vanished. While I was holding my sister's hand in a hospital room, praying she wouldn't code again, he was erasing me. Have you ever trusted someone so deeply, so completely, only to find out they were planning their exit while you were still fighting to breathe? Because that's where this starts. Not with a fight, not with some dramatic screaming match, just quiet, cold betrayal. If you've ever been blindsided like that, if you've ever been left holding the pieces while they walk away like nothing happened, then stay with me. This story, it's for you. And if any part of this already feels way too familiar, hit that like button, drop a comment, because I need to know I'm not the only one who saw it coming way too late. People think betrayal happens in big moments, like someone catching their partner in bed with someone else, some loud fight, a thrown wine glass, a slammed door. But sometimes, it happens in the quiet, in the middle of the most normal week of your life. Mine started with hospital coffee and a folded blanket. My sister Paulette had been in and out of treatments for months. Ovarian cancer, stage 3. We didn't use the word terminal because she told me not to. And when someone you love is hooked up to IVs and trying to laugh through nausea, you follow their rules. No questions asked. I spent more nights than I can count in that hospital. Plastic chairs, beeping machines, nurses who got to know me by name. Wade knew that. He knew exactly where I was every minute. He used to text me little things like, "Proud of you," or "Don't forget to eat." The kind of stuff that seems sweet until you realize it was probably just his way of checking to see how far he could push. We'd been together for 5 years. 5. It's wild how 5 years can fit into one bag of clothes and a half-charged phone. We met when I was working at Barb Andrews' cafe. He came in every morning for a medium roast with oat milk and no sugar, said he liked things simple and clean, said I reminded him of that. That line worked on me back then. He moved in after 6 months, said rent was cheaper that way and we both needed to save. I didn't question it. I made space in the closet, bought new towels, even taught him how to cook rice properly. He used to drown it like it owed him money. And at first, it worked. We laughed a lot, took weekend drives in my old Corolla, fought over playlists, kissed under parking lot lights like we were still in college. But little by little, things changed. Subtle things. He stopped helping around the apartment, started getting quiet when bills came in. And he always had some excuse for not meeting my family. Said they made him feel small. Said Paulette was too much. The night she collapsed, I remember rushing to pack a hospital bag and asking Wade to come with me. He said he had a headache, so I went alone. I guess I should have known then. But love makes you soft. It makes you ignore the tiny cracks until the whole wall falls in on you. He didn't yell. He didn't cheat. At least not in the way you'd expect. What he did was quieter. He studied the parts of me I was too tired to protect and used them to walk away without even looking back. I used to think the worst thing someone could do was leave. Now I know it's pretending to stay while they're already gone. The day it all came crashing down didn't start like anything special. I remember I was standing in line at the vending machine near the ICU. Paulette had finally fallen asleep after throwing up for the 3rd time that morning. I just wanted a Diet Coke and 5 minutes to breathe. That's all. The machine jammed, of course. I gave it one last push and cursed under my breath, the kind of quiet frustration that only shows up when you haven't slept or cried or eaten properly in days. And then I saw the text. 1 from the bank, 1 from my landlord, and 1 from Tammy Walker, my neighbor back at the apartment complex. Tammy wasn't someone I spoke to much. We passed each other in the hall, nodded, the usual small talk about trash day and how the elevator was still broken. Her message was short. Hey, saw some guy moving your stuff. Thought you were moving out? I froze. I stared at it like maybe I'd read it wrong. I texted back. Who? She sent a voice note. I still have it. Tall dude, beard, blue hoodie. Thought it was your boyfriend. Said something about you guys splitting. My heart didn't drop. It disappeared. Like it slipped right out of my chest and ran away before I could beg it to stay. I didn't even tell the nurse I was leaving. I just grabbed my bag, mumbled something to the receptionist, and booked a ride back to the apartment. The whole way there, my mind was racing. But not with suspicion. No, I wasn't there yet. I was worried something had happened, that maybe he got sick, that something was wrong with his mom, that he was packing because we were behind on rent. I still gave him the benefit of the doubt. Even then, that's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't stab you right away. It kind of grazes your skin first, lets you pretend it was an accident. When I got there, the building looked normal. People walking dogs, kids skateboarding down the sidewalk. But when I reached our door, my door, I noticed the welcome mat was gone. The one Paulette gave me that said, "Wipe your feet and your attitude." And then I saw it. A note, taped to the door. It was written on a torn-out notebook page, the kind you'd use for a grocery list. Not even a full sheet. Didn't want to fight, you've got too much going on, this was never gonna work. I'll figure it out, don't worry. No name, no explanation, just that. And the locks changed. I called him, straight to voicemail. I called again and again. I didn't even know I was crying until someone passed by and offered me a tissue. I asked Tammy if she saw where he went. She said, "Sorry girl, he left in your car." My car. Not our car. Not one we shared. My car, the one I'd had since I was 22. The one I paid off with overtime shifts and tip money. Gone. And all I could think was, he waited. He watched me go to the hospital. He knew I wouldn't be home. And that's when he did it. It's not the theft that cuts the deepest. It's the timing, the precision, the knowing. He didn't just leave. He erased me while I was busy keeping someone else alive. I didn't go back to the hospital that night. I should have. Paulette was still there, hooked up to beeping machines, wrapped in 2 thin blankets, waking up between rounds of nausea and morphine. But I couldn't walk back into that room carrying this weight. I couldn't look her in the eyes knowing I didn't even have a home to return to. So I sat in my own silence. There's this little park bench behind the pharmacy next to the gas station, tucked between a crooked fence and a garbage bin. It's not the kind of place people go to think, but I went there anyway. And I just sat. I remember watching the streetlight flicker. One of those orange ones that hum like they're trying to whisper something they can't quite say. I kept thinking about how Wade probably parked my car in some alley, traded it for a pile of cash, and smiled while doing it. Not a trace of guilt. He didn't even take the time to lie properly. He just left a note and a mess. I took my phone out, typed and deleted the same message over and over again. Why would you do this? Did I deserve this? Were you ever going to tell me? But I never hit send, because deep down, I already knew the answer. Wade wasn't cruel in loud ways. He didn't scream. He didn't break dishes. He just wore me down, slowly. Made me feel like asking for help was too much, like having emotions was inconvenient, like being there for my sister made me selfish. He let me carry everything, bills, stress, fear, while pretending to hold the other end of the rope. But the truth is, he'd let go long before I noticed. I used to think heartbreak was loud, but it's not. It's quiet. It's the sound of your name not showing up on someone's lips anymore. It's your toothbrush missing from the cup. Your sweater gone from the hook. It's the silence in the hallway when no one's waiting behind the door. That night, I had nowhere to go. I checked my account, $67.42. My entire life in digital numbers. I still had my wallet, my hospital badge, and a crumpled receipt from the vending machine where the Diet Coke never came out. I slept behind the cafe where I used to work, not because it was safe, but because it was familiar. I curled up in my coat, pulled my bag tight to my chest, and stared at the dark sky like maybe someone up there owed me an explanation. And somewhere between the ache in my neck and the cold on my fingers, I said it out loud. I don't get it. I gave him everything. And the answer came, not in words, but in the stillness around me. He knew that. That's why he took it. That was the first night I realized I couldn't get back what I lost. But maybe, just maybe, I could figure out what he didn't take. My dignity, my resilience, my story. It was just after sunrise. The sky was still undecided. Not fully light, not fully dark. Kind of like how I felt. Like I hadn't chosen what version of myself I wanted to be yet. The broken woman or the one still holding on. I was sitting behind Barb Andrews' cafe, curled up in a threadbare coat watching the delivery guy toss boxes of frozen hash browns onto the back step. And then I heard it. A voice I hadn't heard in years. Low, warm, familiar in the way old songs are, even if you can't remember all the words. You always did show up before the sun. I looked up, confused, still foggy from barely sleeping, and there he was, Ismail McMillan. I hadn't seen him since I was 23. Back then, he lived 2 floors below me, played guitar on the weekends, and wore his pain and his posture like it had weight. We talked sometimes on the fire escape. Shared smokes, shared silences. Nothing romantic, just real. The first thing I noticed was the beard. Fuller now, streaks of silver at the chin. And the eyes. Still gentle, still observant, like he saw things before you said them. He handed me a coffee. No lid, no cream. Just the way I liked it when we used to talk about the world from opposite ends of a splintered stairwell. I didn't say anything at first. I was too embarrassed to be found like this, hair matted, eyes swollen, wearing the same shirt from yesterday. But he didn't flinch. Didn't ask what I was doing behind a cafe at 6 a.m. with everything I owned stuffed into a backpack. He just sat down next to me, stretched his legs out, and took a sip from his own cup. "Wade did it, didn't he?" he said. That was the first time I cried in front of someone. Not the messy kind, not loud, just one of those silent, falling apart from the inside breakdowns. The kind where your breath catches in your throat and your shoulders won't stop shaking. He didn't try to hug me, didn't reach out. He just sat with me while I unraveled, thread by quiet thread. When I finally looked up, he nodded like he already knew the whole story. And maybe he did. Maybe some people are just built to hold space for your grief without asking for a receipt. Then he said something that knocked the wind out of me. "I saw him last week, at Rogelio Cantrell's pawn shop." I blinked. "Wade?" He nodded. "Yeah, he was trying to sell a necklace. Silver chain, turquoise pendant. Yours?" My stomach flipped. It was my mother's. I wore it every day until Wade said it clashed with my work uniform. I stopped wearing it, figured I'd lost it. He must have taken it from the drawer while I was with Paulette. "He said you wouldn't notice," Ismail continued. "Said you were too busy playing nurse to your broken family." That line hit me like a punch to the throat. Too busy playing nurse to your broken family. That's what he thought of me. Not as his partner. Not as someone fighting to keep her sister alive. Just a woman too distracted to notice her world being stolen out from under her. I wanted to scream, but instead, I just asked, "Why would you even tell me that?" Ismail looked down at his cup, turned it slowly in his hands like he was holding something more fragile than coffee. "Because you deserve to know you weren't crazy." That line, "you weren't crazy," meant more to me than any apology Wade could have sent. Because for weeks, I'd been second-guessing everything. Did I ignore the signs? Was I too needy? Too distracted? Too much? But here was someone who saw it clearly. No agenda. No judgment. Just truth. Before he left, he reached into his coat pocket and handed me a slip of paper. "You can crash on my couch, just for a few nights. I live near the bus stop on Carver now." He paused, then added, "Only if you want. No strings. Just tea and peace." And then he walked away. Not trying to fix me, not trying to rescue me, just showing up. Exactly how I needed someone to. I didn't go to Ismail's place right away. I still had that thing in me, the part that believed sleeping on someone's couch made everything too real. Like the minute I accepted help, I was admitting I'd lost. Instead, I spent a couple more nights bouncing between corners. I hoped no one would notice. Behind the library, in the back of the church parking lot. I told Paulette I was staying with a friend from work. I didn't want her worrying. Not while she was learning how to live between chemo cycles and blood draws. But on the third night, after it rained and my shoes were soaked through, I gave in. I showed up at the door of a narrow brick duplex near Carver Street. Ismail opened it before I even knocked. The place smelled like cinnamon and old wood. It was small, quiet, clean in the way that doesn't scream, "Look at me," just lived in, cared for. A guitar leaned against the wall near a stack of vinyls. A photo of his mom hung crooked in the hallway. He handed me a towel. No questions. Just said, "Shower's hot, couch pulls out." It was the kind of kindness that doesn't make you feel like a burden. Later that night, we sat on the floor with mugs of chamomile and a bowl of popcorn between us. No music. No TV. Just rain tapping gently against the window like it was trying to ask permission to come inside. That's when I said it. Soft. Almost like I was confessing a crime. He started small, little things. Ismail didn't speak. He just leaned his elbow on his knee and waited. At first it was the laundry. He'd ask why I used so much detergent. Then it was the thermostat. Said 72 was wasteful, that I could wear a sweater. I let the words roll, each one pulling the next out of me like loose threads. He called my sister dramatic, said she faked being sick for attention, even before the diagnosis. When I said I wanted to take time off to be with her for treatments, he told me not to abandon our future for someone else's tragedy. I remember my hand tightening around the mug, my knuckles white, my voice barely above a whisper. And I stayed. I stayed because I thought loving someone meant understanding their pain. I didn't realize he only ever wanted me when I was small enough to control. Ismail breathed in slow, set his mug down gently. People like Wade, they study the cracks. They don't break you all at once. They chip away until you forget you were whole. That line stuck with me. They chip away until you forget you were whole. It was quiet for a while after that, but not uncomfortable. More like two people sitting inside the same storm, grateful not to be alone in it. I picked at the thread of my sleeve, then asked the question I'd been chewing on for days. "Do you think he ever loved me?" Ismail didn't answer right away. He rubbed the back of his neck, like the truth was stuck there. "Maybe, in the way broken people do. But love that costs you yourself? That's not love. That's possession." And I realized something then. Wade didn't leave because I failed him. He left because I stopped letting him be the center of my universe. Because I chose my sister. Because I chose caregiving over catering. Because I became inconvenient. The next morning, I went to see Stella Minor. She used to work with Wade at an IT help desk gig before he said he wanted to start something on his own. I always thought she had a thing for him, but looking back, she was just the only one brave enough to ask questions he didn't want to answer. I found her working at a thrift shop now. She looked surprised to see me, but didn't flinch. "I figure he ran," she said before I even asked. We sat on a bench near the dressing rooms. I told her everything, or at least enough. Then she said something that hit harder than I expected. "You know he used to talk about you like you were an obligation?" I swallowed hard. "Said you were too sensitive, that you needed too much. He even joked once that he stayed with you out of pity." She paused, but I never bought it. "Why not?" I asked. Stella looked at me, not through me, not around me, at me. "Because even when he said those things, he still checked your Instagram. Still asked how your sister was doing. Still looked nervous when you called. People like Wade, they hate needing anyone, but they need more than anyone else." I left that conversation with something strange in my chest. Not pain, not rage, just clarity. And with clarity comes choice. I couldn't change what he did, but I could choose what I did next. It was a Tuesday night when I finally let myself be still. No moving from one errand to the next. No scrambling to fix what was broken. No replaying Wade's voice in my head like some ghost that didn't know it was dead. Just still. Ismail and I were on the roof of his building. He brought up 2 folding chairs and a single string of lights that didn't quite reach across the railing. The bulbs buzzed faintly, one of them flickering every few seconds, like it couldn't decide if it belonged in the dark. We sat there with mismatched mugs of tea. His chipped at the rim, mine from a novelty Christmas set that said "I like big mugs and I cannot lie." We didn't talk much at first, just listened to the city hum below us. A distant siren, the soft thump of bass from someone's open window. The quiet. I hadn't had real quiet in a long time. And maybe that's why I finally said it. I used to think if I just loved someone hard enough, they'd stay. Ismail glanced over but didn't speak. He always knew the power of letting someone fill their own silence. I'd cook, clean, say yes even when I was dead tired. I let myself get small so he'd feel big. Gave him my time, my money, my body, and still, he left, like I was just a long layover on the way to something better. I paused, swallowed hard. My voice cracked, but I didn't stop. I'm not mad that he left. I'm mad he waited until I was already breaking to kick the last piece out from under me. Ismail set his cup down, leaned forward, elbows on his knees. He didn't break you, though. I looked at him, not defensive, not confrontational, just waiting. You're still here, he said, nodding at me like I didn't even realize it. You're tired, you're hurt, but you're still here. You showed up. That's more than most people ever do. Something about that hit deep, like I'd been holding my breath without realizing it, and finally someone gave me permission to exhale. We sat in silence again, but this time it wasn't empty. It was full of understanding, of shared brokenness, of soft, unspoken things. After a while, I asked him, "Why do you live like this? Simple, quiet, away from everything?" He smiled, slow and a little sad. "Because I used to chase noise, thought success meant being seen. Then I lost someone, and suddenly silence felt like the only honest thing left." I didn't ask who he lost. He didn't offer. But in that moment, I think we both understood something bigger than words. He stood up, walked to the edge of the roof, and pointed toward the skyline. "You see that building? The one with the blinking red light?" I nodded. "That's the storage facility where I work. I clean units during the week, manage the front desk on weekends." Then he turned, walked back to his chair, and looked me square in the eye. "I'm not offering you a solution, but if you want a job, even just part-time, it's yours." My throat tightened, not because of the offer, but because of how he said it. No pity, no rescue mission, just a chance, a way forward. I stared at my hands for a while after that. The lines in my palms looked like tiny roads, some that led somewhere, some that didn't. But maybe, just maybe, one of them started right here. It happened on a Wednesday, the kind of day that felt like it was holding its breath. Overcast, wind tugging at the sleeves of your coat, a sky that couldn't decide whether it wanted to rain or just keep threatening. That morning, Ismail handed me a flyer he pulled off the bulletin board in the break room at the storage facility. City auction, seized vehicles, public access. And there on the list, bold as daylight, 2009 silver Toyota Corolla, VIN ending in 761. My car, the same one Wade had sold out from under me. Turns out, Bert Morrison, the guy Wade flipped it to, never registered it. Got picked up for an unrelated ticket, and the city impounded the car 3 weeks later. It was scheduled to go up for public auction at 2 p.m. I didn't hesitate. I printed every document I still had, original title, maintenance records, insurance papers. I walked into the auction hall with a borrowed coat, boots a half size too big, and a folder that might as well have been my whole damn life. The room was quiet, like a library with fluorescent lights and bad carpet. A few dozen people sat on folding chairs, casually sipping coffee, thumbing through catalogs, talking in low murmurs. I didn't expect to see him there, but of course he showed up. Wade, same slouched walk, same smug half-smile, like the world still owed him something for showing up. He wore a leather jacket I bought him last Christmas. His hair was longer now, a little messier. He spotted me before I spotted him, and when our eyes met, he froze. That was the first win. I didn't give him the drama he was expecting. No outburst, no confrontation, just the look of someone who'd already made peace with never getting an apology. The auctioneer began reading the list. When he got to my car, Wade raised his bidder card like it meant nothing, and that's when I stood up. "Excuse me," I said, voice steady, clear. Every head turned. The auctioneer paused. "That vehicle was stolen and sold without proper ownership. I have proof that the title belongs to me and that the sale was fraudulent." I walked up front, slowly, calmly, like I'd done this before. Like I'd rehearsed it in my head 1,000 times. I laid the documents on the table. "This is the original title. That's my name. This is the registration. Here's a copy of the police report I filed the day I found out it was missing." The clerk flipped through the pages, looked up, nodded once. Wade was still standing, still silent. But I could see it, the way his jaw clenched, his eyes flicked to the door like he was already planning how to disappear again. And for the first time in months, I didn't care what he did next. The auctioneer cleared his throat. "We'll be pulling this vehicle from the auction until we review this claim. Thanks for your patience." People were watching, whispering, A few clapped. Not for me, exactly, but for the moment. For the fact that someone had the guts to stand up and say, "Not today." I turned to walk away, but before I did, I looked right at Wade. Not to hurt him, not to gloat. Just to say this: you sold what didn't belong to you. That's all you've ever done. He didn't speak, didn't follow, didn't even try to explain. And that was the second win. Because when someone loses control over your story, they usually lose their voice too. I didn't get the car back. Not right away, at least. The city dragged its feet. The paperwork stalled. A hearing was scheduled, then postponed, and by the time the dust finally settled, the car had been stripped for parts in a scrapyard across town. It felt like a punch at first. Like someone had taken the last piece of me I thought I could salvage. But, funny thing, I didn't cry. Because by then, I'd already started to rebuild something more important. I'd moved into a small upstairs studio that smelled like pine and patchouli. Nothing fancy, just a mattress on the floor, second-hand curtains, and a plant Ismail gave me that somehow refuses to die. I started working the front desk at the storage facility full-time. Ken Fry, the owner, offered me a raise after I reorganized their filing system and helped settle an embezzlement issue they'd been ignoring for years. Turns out, when you've survived the kind of silence that empties a person, you learn how to pay attention. Paulette's doing better. Not cured, but stable. We talk every night, mostly about books, sometimes about fear. She wants to travel once she's strong enough. She says I should write this story down someday. Maybe I already have. Wade? Never saw him again. Sometimes I wonder where he is, whether he's pulling the same tricks on someone else, whether he ever tells the truth, even to himself. But I don't waste too much time there anymore, because the truth is, he didn't take everything. He left behind something he couldn't see, something he didn't know how to touch. Me, the part of me that survived, the part that stood up at an auction hall and said, "Not today." The part that now looks at herself in the mirror and doesn't flinch. Closure didn't come with an apology. It came when I stopped checking the mailbox. You know what no one tells you? Sometimes the people who say they love you are just really good at borrowing your light. And when they've soaked up all they can, they leave you cold, wondering what you did wrong. But hear me. You didn't do anything wrong. You were kind. You were loyal. You showed up. They didn't. And that's not your shame to carry. I used to think the scariest thing was being alone. But now, I know it's worse to be with someone who makes you feel like a stranger in your own skin. So here's my question to you. Have you ever trusted someone who walked out like they were never there? And when they left, what part of yourself did you have to dig up just to stand again? If this story touched something in you, if it made you remember, reflect, or feel less alone, then hit that like button. Drop a comment. Share your moment. Because there's someone out there scrolling right now who needs to know they're not crazy and they're not broken. They're just healing. Like me. Like you. And if you're still standing, even after all of it, you're already a damn survivor.